This is the developer vlog for Bartok Service Composer, and I'm calling this release Bartok v0.2 because there's still some bugs all over the place and things I haven't made. But trying to celebrate the things that have actually occurred. So let's dive right into that for this version 0.2. First of all, previously services could only have one file. Rounded that out into multi-file. The file tree is connected to that file system and it's usable. And editor tabs exist. They're out there. There are lots of terminal commands and tweaks, and got PM2 on the back end. That was fun. And a service map, which seems to be like pretty fun too. Let's just jump into the current state now that we're done with the summary. Pane view. There's an annoying bug whenever I changed this pane in a previous version, previous video, and I fixed that. That's cool. It's pretty much it. The change with the that changed with the pane view. The Explorer, which is what the tree view is called, now gets its file list from the server. It's not mocked as it was in the previous version, and switching between files works whenever I click on one of those. Give a demo of that here in a minute after I show the editor. Content switching works. That's when I click on the tabs. Basic tabs are functional. You can create, remove, and switch. There are a few bugs with that, but they're in place. And we'll just go ahead and summarize those real quick with a quick demo. If I click on bugs over here in the file tree, you'll see some bugs that I've actually discovered as I was working on this and haven't fixed yet. But then I can go back to the tab view and click on Bartok v0.2 and come back to the file that I was just on. I can also close that particular bug tab, and that'll take me back to the Bartok v0.2. That pretty much is a demo of that. The initial file that pops up here whenever the service is loaded basically will be chosen by looking at the package JSON. There is a main in the package JSON, and that will, if that exists, it'll actually load up that particular file. Otherwise, it'll default to index.js, and that's cool, but not exactly what I wanted to do right here. So yeah, maybe the backend service will do that at some point, but for right now, the editor does that. So it basically determines an entry point. Maybe in the future I'll have remembered tabs and that kind of stuff, but not really fancy at that level just yet. So we'll jump over to the terminal. There's a basic full screen command. If you're in the non-kiosk mode, or if you're in a regular browser and you want to open full screen, all you have to do is go over to the terminal, type in full screen, and now you'll get all the available screen that you can to be working on this as your editor. You can also click this icon that is the second one up on the bottom left hand corner. The first one up doesn't do anything yet, but as you can guess, in the future it'll control settings. But you can click on that, and that'll enter you into full screen, and then the new icon that appears there, when you click on it, it'll exit you out of full screen. Just whichever one you want to use it. I don't care. Me personally, I found the kiosk mode, which opens me up in full screen all the time, so I don't even care about that anymore. I mean, I care, I really do. So the delete command works properly for the project. I put this in as something that had actually been fixed, but then in previous versions of this vlog, I discovered that doesn't work all that great, so I don't know. I don't even know what I was talking about with that one, but I think it had something to do with, if you do a read, you'll see all the services over here. You should be able to delete a service. I'm not going to show a demo of that one because I don't think that it works all that well right now. There's some kind of issue with that, but there were a lot of changes to the back end to support PM2. So maybe not only PM2 but also the multi-file that probably screw that one up. So I'll look at that one later. There's also the help command now. I find this one useful because it tells me all the commands that could potentially be supported. Right now, manage and monitor, I think, are not working. Previous iterations of this UI, I needed a way of hitting a API pretty quickly because I was working on something in the back end. So I just mocked out all the commands that I would want to do, and been using add file, rename, and delete file. But I've also been using this clear or CLS. I'll just hit clear, and that clears out the terminal. That's the next item that was on the list here. So there's also a terminal menu bar. If you direct your attention to the upper right, you'll notice something that looks a lot like Visual Studio Code. You have this terminal, and we have logs over here, which I'm showing grayed out, and we also have the plus, the terminal split icon, the trash icon, the left arrow, and the X. None of those do anything right now. They're just in place to kind of like give me the sensation that, you know, I'm making something full-fledged, and if I want to go in and change those and make them useful at some point, I can do that. Logs I will probably do. I will make that work at some point because I want to see logs streaming from the service. I'll go a little bit more into that a little bit later. One thing that has been useful to me as I'm developing this is keeping notes. Control S, Command S to save the current file. What that will do is a update to the running instances. It'll bring down one instance and create another version that's with the new code from the UI. It'll restart that. Also, it'll do a persist so that the next time the server is restarted, that same exact code will be used to recreate the service. So that's pretty cool because I was getting kind of tired of having to do an update and then also wait for that and do a persist. It was just kind of annoying. So Command S works the way you would expect in an editor, but in this case it does what I just said. I'm going to go through a quick demo of file add, delete, and rename. I noticed a bug in the previous version, so we'll see how that works in this case. So if I do a add file, add foo, we see that foo gets added over here. I can rename, if I can spell right, rename file foo to wow, and we'll see that that bug is there. So I could just do a read 999, and we'll see that the wow actually shows up over here, and I could just go ahead and start typing or whatever. I'm going to close that out because I want to show the delete file. We're going to delete file wow, and that goes away. So that's a brief demo of that working. Just going to clear. All right, so let's move on to the server. Most of this has kind of already been covered from previous items, but we do a multi-file read and write now. Instead of having a service start up that just has an index.js file, you can have lots of extra files. So you could do require of those other files and have more complicated services. I only wrote one or two index.js examples, and I did not write a more complicated version of multi-file services. However, whenever I get the folders in place and get file moving and renaming and folder renaming and all that stuff in the next version, I'll go ahead and do a more full-blown version of a demo with that. That is just what is running in server memory for services. What gets persisted, I think I mentioned this earlier, what gets persisted is whenever a command says persist, then the current instances get persisted to the database so that the next time the server starts and brings those services back up, it'll actually bring those up from wherever you persisted to. For me, it's a SQLite database, but in the future it could be something else. Pretty much leave that alone and go to a basic PM2 integration. when I show the service map in the next step, this will probably make a lot more sense, but hopefully help tie in where I'm trying to go with this. We have all of the services that I listed earlier. We have those now in PM2. Optionally, you can stick with Node if you want, but I'm going to build out the PM2 services. That gives me memory and CPU statistics, and I'll build that into the server so that the APIs that I was mentioning earlier can actually retrieve that information, and also so that the next thing, the service map, can actually use those. So let's move on to the service map. The way you get to the service map is over to the left underneath the looking glass icon that does nothing. There's no search right now. You just click on that network looking icon. So that pulls the service map up. Inspiration for that is v0.2, and you'll see with v0.2 you are able to do CPU and memory usage on in a graphical way, and that's something I'm interested in doing in the future with bartok. For now, this is all mocked, and the only way I can find out information from the server is just by doing a read without integer, and that gives me back a list. All of this stuff that's in the list will eventually make its way into the service map, so that and then there will also be more, but you should be able to track your services and see how they're connected and see how much memory they're using, and whether or not they've been scaled up or whatever. But anyways, that's a future release. We'll just leave that alone for now. And that pretty much sums up pretty much what happened in v0.2. Multi-file was a huge win. File tree updates were a huge win. Tabs, a lot of things that basically get this thing along as an editor. In the future, we're going to move on to building out that service map a little bit more and getting the APIs of the backend service to actually support all of that. So I think maybe as that stuff is put in place, the vision for this will become a little bit more obvious. Anyways, thanks for listening. Have a good evening.